I'm not really sure how we follow that from an intelligence standpoint. So we're going to dumb this down a little bit.
Well, I think explaining content can be pretty close.
Oh, there you go.
The dark energy
I got to
demo.
switch between my glasses. All right, and to dumb it down, we're excited here today to talk about content. We've talked about content a lot with Hedna. We're going to go at this again as two hoteliers. We're going to try and bring some solutions to the table. But to start it off, I want to start it off a little differently. We're going to play a game, talk about dumbing it down.
Okay.
For those of you that know me, Mike Carlo, I'm a Bravo celebrity. I love all things Bravo for anybody that watches Bravo. And I watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen. He loves to play games. So we're going to do a word association game. Chris has not been prepped for this, by the way.
I don't know if this is... Okay, let's see how this goes.
So,
can I read a disclaimer before we get into this?
You have to say what comes to... So you're going to say the first word or phrase that comes to your mind when
Right.
I say a word related to content. Okay?
Oh, interesting.
You ready? Here we go.
You realize what this... Okay.
And we're going to follow the Hedna code of conduct here, too. First one. Content scores.
Painful.
Okay. You can't have the same answer for all, though.
I think they might be, though. No, I'll try not to. All right.
Image size requirements.
Can I still use pain, but in a different way?
You can use a phrase,
Like
too.
pain in the butt, ass? What am I allowed to say?
I'm going to push you off of the pain
Okay.
word. Okay?
Yep.
We'll take it in a different
Difficult.
direction. Yeah, difficult. That's a
Difficult.
good one. What about content parody?
It's a struggle.
Okay. Static content.
Archaic.
Good one. Content management systems.
Oh, God. See, now I'm trying to filter. Useful at times.
Okay, I'd go with that. Content audits.
Make work.
Extranets.
The cause make works.
Okay. And I'll give you the last one, social media.
Out of my control.
Oh, there you go. Isn't that nice to be able to say? All right, we're going to spend the next bit with some questions, and then we'll go into a Q&A, so please use the app to get your questions ready. Again, we're putting on our hoteliers hat, and we're talking about the issues and how we believe they should be solved. And we work for two very different brands, so we'll have two different perspectives. So one of the things that has been talked about a lot in the past is how you create the business case to get a team of dedicated third-party content individuals. So tell us how it works at Accor. Do you have an individual content team? And if so, did you have a tough time selling that to your leadership team?
So, the environment that I'm in, that we're working through right now, is I'm in the process actually of creating another distribution team, and there'll be specific champions or leads on that team that will handle content. In the past, previous to the acquisition by Accor and then going through some transition on the distribution side, definitely had a specific team of 3 to 4 individuals that handled content and did content management solely. And so as I'm going through the rebuild of a distribution team, assigning that resource, it's absolutely an aspect and a part of that team is to be specific on who's going to handle content and putting.
So what is the role of your content team at corporate versus the properties?
At corporate, it's basically, my content team or the regional content team focuses on the curation of the content. So, we'll have hotels, we have different applications that they would submit updated hotel content to, or a process by which they submit to the content team. These are the updates that need to take place, depending on what type of update it is. The hotel can update it themselves, that we then need to ensure that it flows through all the systems, or we take the information and update it regionally. That there are some areas that hotels don't have access to update on the fly.
Okay. Yeah, I struggle with, Chris and I were talking about this yesterday, but we've talked about this before. I really struggle with the fact that we've come a long way in the world of distribution where, like at MGM, we will not partner with you if you have a manual connection, right? You have to have connectivity to us. And that case isn't the same for content, and it angers me.
Right.
It angers me a lot. I feel that if you can't prioritize content and make it just as important as connectivity, we need to evaluate our partnership. And I have a content team at MGM. I'm lucky. They are fully dedicated to third-party content. And the manager of that team I have for our partner sitting out there, he's calling you once a quarter, and he's saying, tell me your plans for content. And I review that, and the needle doesn't really move every quarter. And the answer is usually, we don't have the systems. Somebody's calling me. We don't have the technology or the systems. We don't have the people. We don't have the money to invest. I understand during COVID, I think content teams were probably the first to get furloughed or even eliminated. It's such an important aspect. I do think Expedia and Booking.com, because when they came out with content scores, that pretty much solidified for us at MGM that we were going to have a dedicated content team because of the importance of it. Yep. With our sort and ranking. But let's talk about how do we get our partners to prioritize content in their product roadmaps, and what conversations have you had with them?
I think it comes down to that and the conversations that I've had and continue to have, if we're going to be using a content score as part of a parity score, as part of that type of situation, then there needs to be, to your point, more development put on ensuring that an automated feed can be accepted, as opposed to needing to send off a spreadsheet or needing to send an email or any of the above, and really being able to accept, I don't want to say completely open description. There definitely needs to be some guidelines, but I think there is so much time spent on ensuring that, this description field is going to work with this partner, this description field is going to work with this partner, so you end up with different iterations of let's say the same room type description. And I think to ensure that parity and that content scores are aligned, the conversation needs to continue. It needs to go further into understanding what each different hotel organizations, how they're built, how their infrastructure network works, and being able to accept it, an automated feed from hotels.
I know I said this in Miami, but I'm going to say it again because I actually believe it. But, it's kind of like when we said earlier the GDSs should come together, and Gianna had said that. The hoteliers need to come together and force the issue, and I believe we can force the issue contractually. Penalties, some kind of benefit to the hoteliers for those that don't support automation of content. What are your thoughts on that?
And there's even the aspect of it's a tough, to your point, right now, there's so many of us that are working at putting teams back together and resource back together. And so what then starts to come in line is we have hotels hotels have access to extranets and have the ability to update things on their own without a central or a regional overview of what's being updated or validated on an extranet. That is another piece that can begin to fall into a content score and drive it down. And then it's the constant needing to go to different hotels and say, you can't say that, or you can't do that, because it's not the same as what we would have on this site or brand.com, et cetera. So all that to say, yes, I could see that being part of the contractual agreement for sure.
How else do we push the needle forward? It was an idea. Happy to chat with it after.
Yeah.
During the networking break. Let's move on to technology, right? So what is the solution on how to make content easier? How do we automate it? What are your thoughts, and this is a debate within the PMS and the CRS community, how much content should a CRS or PMS hold? Do you feel that they should have elements of a content management system in there, or is it a content management system is really separate outside of the CRS PMS? Maybe the CRS PMS is just seamless content. What are your thoughts there?
I think it comes down to really the capacity and the functionality of the CRS or PMS. If it doesn't have the capability to be able to hold, curate, and be able to push out the content the way you need it to push out, then it shouldn't exist in there at all. But if you had a CRS that has the ability and to contain all that, then having a one-stop shop, really, that would be the ultimate goal. And I think that's definitely what we should be looking at moving forward, is having one spot, as opposed to, and I think of this right now as I'm training a new team, going through the hire of a new team. Content management is now, 1, 2, 3, it's literally 5 different systems that you need to then train an individual on how to update where it's going to go, what this means. And if you had one spot to contain it all, that would be a dream.
Yeah.
But it needs to work.
Yeah, I think ultimately we're because Chris and I both focus on third party. I don't believe you manage the direct channels for content, right? So you have a team, like at least at MGM, we have a team that manages direct channels, and then my team manages third party. They obviously have to work very closely together. They have to communicate. If a change comes in from a property, we have a general mailbox. Everybody has to go update it on their channels. But that team has a content management system that they use for the website, and then our call center has their own content. They have actually a couple of different content sources they use, and then we have all the extranets, or we even have to email partners content still, which is very frustrating. So yeah, a content hub of some sorts, I like to call it, that we could use to push content out would be super helpful. I love seeing the questions coming in, by the way. This is a fun session. Let's talk about best practices for auditing content. Anything you want to share? It's very labor intense, right? You have to literally go out there and read all your content. It can change. My content manager loves to just say to me, Sarah, you'll never believe what I saw out on blah, blah, blah site today. I have no idea how that got there.
Right. And this, as business picks up, we're starting to see a lot of, if it's not necessarily us doing the audit, but we receive audits from hotels that have received it either from an agency or a third, an online third party or travel agent specific. And it's the time spent in those audits to sometimes even figure out what site, what GUI is being used to see that content. And then B, you spend so much time then figuring out how far downward distribution did it take for that content to get to that site. So what is that interface? Where does that interface connect to? How many other spots does it stop along the way? We end up spending an enormous amount of time, because you can make an update, you do a push, and you think it's all taken care of, and then 3 days later it's still the same, nothing has changed, so then you back to the drawing board.
But you make that update, you do the push, but then does your team go out and, let's say you have 50 partners, do you go individually audit every partner's site? And for those that are opaque, you have to ask them to send the content to you so you can review it, audit it, and send it back.
I mean, ultimately, we'll get to that point. Right now, you don't necessarily have the time
for the
or
number
manpower.
of your hotels.
Because
Yeah,
it takes
we could do that,
forever.
but your hotels,
Yeah, not
you
yet.
need a huge team to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, auditing is a big part of what we do at MGM, because you can't, because it's so manual, you can't trust what goes out there. And every time they audit, they'll find something, whether it's an image or a piece of copy or a new field that was added that nobody told us about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it happens pretty consistently.
Yeah,
In fact,
absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially recently, it just with business all coming back, everyone's really anxious to make sure, their properties are being properly represented, and it takes a lot of time to figure these things out.
I'm sure I don't know where Natalie or Sebastian, I think we got short on time, so we'll try and catch up a little bit and go to the questions. I see the clock is under 2 minutes now, but I want to try and get to some of these questions. And I would love, you guys can tell I'm super passionate and have strong opinions on this. I'm happy to have conversations after the session on this topic. So the first question, why still focus on long GDS descriptive content in the era of internet? Why not having just a link to the hotel web, Instagram? Do travel agents read that much? I would love the GDSs to answer that question.
Right.
Would you? We're
Yes.
just required to put in all that content that they need. But I would love to talk to the GDSs about, and maybe they covered it in their individual sessions on, are they changing content and the needs, the requirements, I should say. Chris, I'll give this one to you. What content do you believe should be managed at the chain corporate level versus the property level?
I think at the chain and corporate level, when I think about what should be managed at that, I'm thinking about the content that is, for example, like a room type descriptor, that we know there's going to be a specific format that needs to be followed. It can't be special characters, whatever those are. It needs to be within so many characters. It's descriptive content like that. I've found is better managed at a central or regional level because we have control over it. We understand it. We understand how it's going to react. When I think about property level, I leave open, and I like to leave open to hotels, your check boxes on amenities, or what's on site at the hotel, what's included, in resort fees, or those types of things that it can be very specific and check a box and let it go. But I think when you get into descriptors, it is something that either should go through an e-commerce for validation, and then there's the syntax and the format that should go through a central.
I will say the good news, I do believe the partners have really gotten away from descriptions and made it easier for to do drop downs and fill in the blanks, and then they have copywriters. Many of them have copywriters, which I think is great. So they have pushed the envelope on trying to help us there. Where's the one that I loved? There was a question in there that I think it got pushed down. If automating content distribution, how would you foresee keeping fields updated enough for the OTAs? They are constantly adding more requirements to the scores. Yes, they are. We know you want to beat us at brand.com, and so you're adding more stuff to keep competitive. I get that. I want to answer this one just because I want you to tell us. Please tell us. You don't tell us when you add something. We find it when we're auditing. I'm lucky because we're small and I can catch it. Somebody like you, I bet you can't catch it. I have no problem with you adding stuff, but you need to tell us.
With the appropriate amount of time as well.
Yeah, and give us the time.
I mean, depending on, if you have 10 hotels or an independent hotel, or if you have a region that covers 200 hotels, it definitely can take time to get those things updated and in place, even communicated.
So there's a lot of questions in here all related to it's on the topic of trust, right? There was one in here. The one I'm looking for is the person that asked, how do you trust us to put the content out there? But I would put that back on you and say, well, wait, you trust us to push the correct rates out there, but now you don't trust us to put the right content out there? It's our content for our hotels. You wouldn't necessarily know if it was accurate or not. So I find that one actually to be a very interesting question. But there's a lot on here on what's the best approach to translating your content? Oof. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic, right? Translating content.
I mean, at the core, we use a translation company for all of it, everything that is pushed out centrally.
In many cases, hotels don't have updated content covering all aspects of their brands, so part of the issue lies with the brands. How do you resolve this? That's a fair point. You have multiple brands, so you get to answer this one.
Which one did you read?
The top one. We don't have, it's content for across the brands, right? Which is a challenge, for sure, for the hotels. You would need brand experts, right?
You do need brand experts, and what needs to be, I mean, what ends up happening is with each brand, there should be a set of guidelines for that brand. And so that when a hotel, you're able to communicate that, these are the guidelines for this brand. This is what your content should read like or should appear as. And again, that's the relationship again between distribution, the operational side of it and the business side of it with your marketing and your e-commerce and your brand teams. Brand teams really need to have a say in putting those guidelines together.
I love this one. Why can't the hotel simply maintain the content they want us to use in a standardized format in a location where we can simply access via URL? I think that's a great question. I think that number one, so let's say MGM has 50 partners. I would say maybe, 70% of the fields are the same. You all have a lot of uniquenesses to what content you ask for, so they're different. So we would then have to go out and make sure that we had a URL with, some kind of like extranet that we built that would have all of the fields on there. And then we would have to trust that you were putting in the answers correctly. There's that trust thing again. For example, Wi-Fi being included in the resort fee, then in the drop-down where it says, do you have free Wi-Fi or not, is the answer yes or no? There's always a lot of clarifying questions that we have to work with the partners on. So I think the trust issue then goes on our side. Do we trust you guys to do that on our behalf and that you're going to get it accurate? Yeah, and exactly. It's a lot of work for us too. Would have to build, it's not just a URL, would have to build something that would encompass all the fields that all of the partners require.
Build something and then educate again, continually educate with the turnover internally.
I will wrap it up with, I think we have this conversation every conference. We don't seem to come to solutions. I think there's been talk of bringing the content, Audrey, bringing the content working group back. We need to continue the conversation. And there's payments is up next, but after this, the networking break, I think Chris and I would love to talk to some of the partners together and let's start solutioning.
Absolutely. And I think some of those conversations, even over the past yesterday afternoon, I found myself in content discussions already. So it's one of those topics, again, that's bubbled up to the surface.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your partnership on this. Thanks, everyone.